The active site is RNA. The closest protein is 18 angstroms away, which is light years away in biochemistry. So it by no means comes close to solving the entire problem, but RNA is a huge step toward solving this chicken and egg problem, because RNA can do both.
Yeah, I would say they're very far from a solution in spite of enormous federal tax dollars spent to try to solve this problem, because it's unsolvable. The fact of the matter is they're just so complex. I think you could point out that most of the books in the library around here are based on the same 26 letters of the alphabet. So if I go through a book by Shakespeare and a book by somebody else and find out, Shakespeare uses the letter E, 18% of the time, and some other author uses the letter E 18% of the time. Does that prove a similarity? Well, yeah, that proves that's how often you use the letter E. Does that prove the books are related? No. I think all of the research being done on proteins of different creatures showing the similarities is evidence for common designer. And I resent that the textbooks in your town, in most towns, only present the kids with one view. They show the kids the evidence, the similarities of DNA, and say, see, this is proof of a common ancestor. Oh, that's too complex. It doesn't change. It's proof of a common designer, that's all. The RNA-DNA chicken and egg problem is a very serious problem. And even if they could imagine a scenario how it could happen, again, you're back to imagination, not science. One student said to me, he said, what are you going to say if scientists make life in the laboratory? I said, well, I guess that's going to prove it takes intelligence to make life, isn't it? That's what it's going to prove. The purpose of tonight's debate was to discuss, is there evidence for evolution? I'm not asking the taxpayers to pay for my theory to be taught in the schools. If I was, the burden of proof would be on me. Since he's asking the taxpayers to pay for his religion to be taught, then the burden of proof's on him. Where's the evidence? I don't think we saw any tonight. So you have nothing to be upset about, except that I think we did, the purpose of the debate was fulfilled. We're supposed to see, is there evidence for evolution? That was the purpose of the debate. We could debate the evidence for creation, I think, but that's like saying, we need to light a candle to see the sun. The evidence for creation is all around us. It is the evidence for creation is a very powerful evidence, is the absolute impossibility of the contrary. In logic, if I said, I believe a lake out there is only got water for the top 5 feet, the rest of it's air under the water. That is logically impossible. Water is heavier than air, so it falls. For someone to say a complex machine like a watch happened by chance, that is logically impossible. Even though I've never seen the designer of this watch, I believe he exists, because it's impossible for there not to be a designer. When you see a house, there must be a builder. When you see a creation, there must be a creator. So the evidence for the creator is in the creation. The Bible says in Romans chapter 1, people are willingly ignorant. They don't want to see the creator, and God gives them up to their own crazy beliefs. It'd be tragic if God has given up on you. I hope he hasn't yet. I suggest you read Romans chapter 1 carefully, okay?
I would just like to try to make what I think is a hugely important point about evidence. I see tons of evidence for creationism. I see 1,000 cases right here in front of me. Birds, atoms, the strong nuclear force. It's all evidence for creation. But I can also explain the origins of things through a theory that I've attempted to explain tonight. So the point here that I think people tend to forget is that a given empirical fact, such as the existence of a marvelously constructed human, can be evidence for two completely opposed things at the same time.
I think the effort should be put into getting lies out of the textbooks. Any textbook that teaches that the embryo has gill slits, the page ought to be torn out. Okay, it's not true. If they teach the whale has a vestigial pelvis, that page ought to be torn out. It's not true. If they teach about the so-called cavemen, whether it be Lucy or, you name it, watch my video number 3 or number 2. I cover all those. Or there's a book called Bones of Contention dealing with the Neanderthals, or Buried Alive about the Neanderthals. Bones of Contention covers all the cavemen. I just simply think textbooks should be accurate. Take the lies out. Don't tell them the embryo has gills. It's not true. They have folds of skin. I got folds of skin in my elbow and behind my knee, too. So I can't breathe through them, okay? So I think what's happening is we have about 50 basic lies that are continually put into the textbooks, because that's all they have for evidence. It's true there are lobe-finned fish. It's not true that we know they evolved to something else. It's not true. You can believe that if you want, but you just left science and went into fantasy land, which is fine for fantasy textbooks, but it's not fine for science books. So I think what you should do is continually go after, we need to get people with intelligence on the textbook selection committees to select books that don't have these lies. We need to get people writing textbooks that don't have these lies. We need to get people demanding, we need to get some lawyers that love God to sue the schools for allowing lies into the textbooks. California law is very clear. You have to have accurate, up-to-date textbooks. You don't have them in California. Fix it. That would take an hour to answer that question. Yes, there was, but I go with great detail on video number 6 of my series. You can watch it right on my website for free. There are two theories about the Ice Age among Christians. There certainly was an Ice Age. My theory that I proposed on video 6 is believed by many millions of people. It's not original with me. Is that the Ice Age actually caused the flood. The Earth got hit by an ice meteor, or we went through the tail of a comet. Anyway, a bunch of ice from space got dumped on the poles, which is the only way to explain the rapid freezing of so many animals. You know, it froze so quickly, had to require something colder than naturally occurs on Earth, something around 300 below zero. Doesn't ever get that cold on Earth, and yet we find mammoths frozen with food still in their stomach, still preserved. You can't freeze an animal that big without freezing them real fast, or else the food in the stomach's going to rot. The outside will freeze, inside will rot. So